Welcome everyone this afternoon to our January Pinal County Community College Governing Board January 1st meeting of the year. And we're excited about that. We've had a resignation. Mr. Jack Yarrington is no longer on the board. Dan Miller has joined us via telephone. And with the four of us now present, we have a quorum and we will declare this meeting open. We will begin with a pledge of allegiance. I haven't asked anybody yet to lead that, but Deborah, would you be willing to do that for us?
Of course.
And then we will go from there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our third item on the agenda is call to the public. Has anyone signed up for call to the public? We have no signees, so we will go from there to the action items on the agenda. And the first item is election of officers for 2019. Therefore, I declare the board adjourned, sine die, and turn the microphone and the gavel over to President Elliott.
Thank you, President Gibson. Do I get the gavel now? Yep. I just wanted it. So now we'll open the floor to nomination and elections of board president for 2019. Do I have any nominations?
I would like to make a nomination. I would like to make a nomination for all of these BC, D&E, that we keep the slate exactly as it has been for the past year. Mr. Gibson as president, Mr. Miller as vice president / secretary, and Dr. Banks as it's not AADGB, it's the Association of Community College Trustees representative.
Thank you. Is there a...
I second the motion.
Okay, thank you. I will do a roll call vote. Was that the pleasure of?
Yes,
okay.
please.
Board member Miller. Aye. In favor, say aye. Okay. Opposed, nay. Dr. Banks.
Yes.
Gladys Christensen.
Aye.
And Rick Gibson.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Congratulations.
What about Dan? He voted first.
I said aye.
Yeah, it was just a little bit hard to hear you. I'm sorry, Dan.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's support. It's been a great year, 2018, and we look forward to an exciting 2019. And thank all who are willing to serve the public of Pinal County in elected and appointed positions. We will move now to a resolution to support guided pathways. Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, President Gibson. As you recall, during our board retreat, you had a presentation about the guided pathways model, which not only encompasses academic mapping, but also wraparound student services. And in order to really do this work, it's been stressed to us from the American Association of Community Colleges and our peer institutions that board support is critical to being able to deploy guided pathways effectively and efficiently. So before you is a resolution on behalf of the Board of Governors to adopt in support of our guided pathways work. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
I wholeheartedly support this effort. It took a lot of courage to bring it to the 5 campuses in the 3 centers or 2 centers. Anyway, the centers. My motion is to move forward with this process.
Thank you. I have a motion to support the resolution of guided pathways as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Dan second.
I take that was a second, Dan. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Second,
I have a
on the
motion and a
for,
second
guided pathways.
to support the resolution of guided pathways as presented. Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Banks?
Aye.
Mrs. Christensen?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. It's a unanimous decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 6, consideration of the consent agenda. All items are consent matters, unless they are removed from the consent agenda at this time. We'll vote on them as a block unless one or more are pulled from the consent agenda for further discussion. What is the pleasure of the board, please?
I would make a motion that the consent agenda be approved as written.
Have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
No, but I just want a brief discussion on some of these second reads from HR. Is that what you told me, Brandy?
Each of them that would have an asterisk, Dr. Banks, are part of the consent agenda and would be passed without discussion unless one or more of those are pulled from the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve each of those that are marked with an asterisk, and I'm looking for a second.
I'm going to second because what I want discussion on does not have an asterisk.
Okay, very good. I have a motion and a second to are you referring to item number 9?
So, my recommendation is
Dan is talking.
Dan
Dan, I didn't quite hear what you're saying. I'm sorry.
buy the furniture later. I'm just waiting to say I agree.
You, for clarification, are you saying you're agreeing to the consent agenda?
Yes, I am. I apologize for the background noise.
That's okay. We can't control our neighbors anyway.
I just wanted to be clear that the item 9 as a total is marked with an asterisk. And if we pass, we can't come back and discuss. So I'm just wanting to double check and see what your thoughts were, Dr. Banks.
No, I'm looking at items in number 10.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, all items that are marked with an asterisk, and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll proceed to vote. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, I promised
Thanks,
Dr.
sir.
Mr. Miller that we would do a roll call. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Banks.
Aye.
Mrs. Christensen.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Motion carries unanimously. Information items, going to item 10. Brandy Clark, please. We do have some discussion and some questions.
Just in time.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Governing Board President Gibson, Governing Board members, President Elliott, Mary Lou, staff, students, and guests. This afternoon, I present to you the first reading of the following policies. You will find in your packet a revision to faculty qualification standard, a revision to the retirement policy, and then the following policies are all new, which are curriculum, assessment, emeritus status, freedom of expression, and academic freedom. These are for your review only, and I'd be welcome to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Discussion?
Okay. All right. The new policy on freedom of expression. I'm sorry. Frog jumped. I thought this policy was already stated in academic freedom. And it just seems to be redundant. So, could somebody explain the difference between the freedom of expression and academic freedom?
I'll be happy to, Dr. Banks. That's a really good question. The freedom of expression policy, actually, if we had the procedure attached to this, that you would see that it really relates to people who want to come on our campus and debate or hold a town hall or a meeting, that we can't prohibit them from doing that. And this came out of the state. It's a statute that we have to have a procedure for ensuring people have access to college property to do freedom of expression. Academic freedom really applies more to the classroom. So they do kind of interlock and interchange, but one would be for this really came out of two, Dr. Banks, you might have remembered this last few years that colleges and universities have come under a lot of scrutiny for inviting people on their campuses to speak, and then at the last minute, denying them to speak because students got in an uproar, I guess might be a better word. So this came out of the legislature, that we have to allow people to come on our campus. We can't deny them access to freely express their thoughts and opinions, even if we agree or disagree.
Who in the legislature put together this?
I can look that up for you, but it passed last year. So every college was required to have a policy and a procedure in place. And actually, this policy and the procedure that follows is the same one that all of the community colleges worked on together and had legal teams look at and adopted. So if you looked at Maricopa's, it looked the same. Pima's is the same on this freedom of expression. But I'll look that up for you and find out who did that piece of legislation.
Thank
if I might
you.
tag onto that just a little bit, Dr. Banks, I had some of the same questions that related to it, and what relieved my mind was the last sentence in that particular policy, which states that individuals seeking access to college property for the purpose of expression shall follow the guidelines set forth in public access and expression on college property procedures. So that gives me some comfort, and that all would be orderly or could otherwise be addressed by law enforcement.
And we do have a defined process that they have to go to, a contact person that they have to make contact with if they are going to be on campus, and we do follow the exact same consistent process for anybody.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Dr. Banks, please proceed.
No, my only concern, and I've seen this in action in California. This is not California, thank the Lord. I just don't want to see people who have hatred of different groups on this campus trying to persuade our students to hate when they don't. And I can make some examples. So, as I understand, Ms. Clark and Mr. Gibson, that we're assured this will not happen.
Well, you know, we can't always state that it will never happen, but at least there is a policy in place with guidelines to help us to manage and comply with state law.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other of the policies listed there for information items that you had a question about?
There was one policy that was really skinny, and it pertains to an existing policy, and I'm trying to get the title of it. Okay, it reads the college president or designee representative is responsible for the establishment of procedures and guidelines for retirement.
That's 10.2, Mr. Miller, if you're following along.
Where did you see 10.2?
It's the one there by the side of retirement.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're following the agenda. It would be helpful if we had the operations for this policy. It makes me nervous because things can happen if we have the wrong president or something happens.
If I can just speak to that, Dr. Banks, the procedure that goes along with that policy is specifically tied to Arizona State retirement. So we have specific guidelines that we have to follow through them. Those aren't anything that the president can change. As you know, you have your age plus your point system allows you to retire. So all that procedure does is give you the steps of what you need to do when you would be considered eligible to retire.
Okay.
So that might help you ease your mind a little bit.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Miller, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, no, I do not have any questions at this time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Christensen. No questions. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your help. Next item is those agenda items that are related to reports. Go to item number 11, Arizona Association of Community College Trustees Report. Dr. Banks.
This is going to be a patchwork of presentation because there were various items. One wasn't connected to another. So if you feel like you're lost at any time, please say repeat or try to make some connection. And I know you're not supposed to speak out, but I'm giving you permission, or I'm asking Mr. Gibson if he will allow that to happen. The first thing is the association is going to start meeting quarterly because we need in between time to work with our new consulting agency called Pivotal. I'm going to spell that. It's Pivotal. And they have visited with us since we started our new terms. And they're an exceptional consulting group. It's amazing after seeing so many terrible consulting groups. This one is really on target. Now, what they did do for us this time around was to give us a list of legislators by House and by Senate. The lists are up here, and they show the legislators by committee. Every board member, Dr. Elliott and Mrs. Hernandez, has those lists. So if you need some, just email one of us and I can get the list to you. What the consulting company is working on right now, and Dr. Elliott, feel free to jump in because you have more updated information than I do, is on Prop 301 funding, which is designed for workforce embellishment. And I'm not clear at this time because I haven't been following this close enough, but there was a 3% increase, which would give each college district, with the exception of, they said, Maricopa and Pima, $250K. The consulting group will continue to work with us, and there is a strategy which I can't share right now, but it will be approaching Governor Ducey for additional funding based on his academic goals, which I shared with you in the fall. And he had, I believe, 8 to 9 goals. The last 2 goals pertain to transfer, increasing transfer from community colleges to the university. And the second goal was to increase the number of bachelor holders and people with certificates in each county. And again, I have all this on my hard drive, and if you want copies, again, I have his goals laid out with the current percentages of people by goal category, as well as target rates, as well as people in Pinell County. So you would have the state, Pinell County, and then his target rates. So much for our consulting right now, working with the consulting group. In February, I was notified walking into the meeting today I will be the only one going. Please pray for my plane to stay in the air when it's supposed to. Uh, I'm extremely excited about this conference because we will have a session on advocacy, which is sorely needed for our membership. And then our group can turnkey what the lessons of that session for the community colleges. The aim is to get more money from the legislature. I know you're all sitting there saying, haha, good try. But we've got to believe in this. We've got to push on it. At the conference, we will also have the breakfast routine we started at the last conference in New York City, and it's early in the morning. As far as I know, there is no topic. We discuss various topics. I have one which is talking about our partnerships and what we're getting from them. And the research, the background research, was done by Chris and his team, Mr. Watka and his team. So I'm very proud to present that while people are having their bacon and eggs. At the all scholarship luncheon in Mesa on the 27th, our group is going to have an all-out effort to invite legislators. Now, most likely, we're going to limit the list to only those legislators on the education committees, the higher ed committee, and that's combined with the workforce committee. So they aren't people necessarily representing us, but it would be nice to have your presence in meeting with them. And I've got to step this up a little bit. So those are the main points that we discussed. And there's one other one. Professional development for new trustees or returning trustees. We sorely need that. So we're going to be looking at that probably early fall, August, or September. I appreciate presenting this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Could I
Dr.
ask
Banks.
for questions?
Absolutely. I was going to ask Mr. Miller first if he had any questions.
Dan, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am, I do not. I thought it was very thorough, and I support your ability or desire to engage legislator at the Community College Trustee, Arizona Association of Community College Trustee group.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Christensen. I just was struck during your report about the desire statewide to increase the retention rate and also the graduation rates, and that fits right into our guided pathways project that we're doing. So that's exciting. Dr. Elliott, anything that you'd like to add to the report?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. Look forward to hear from your next one.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is report from Central Arizona College President, Dr. Elliott.
Thank you, President Gibson. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the meeting. First, I have the legislative update to share with you. There is the first House Bill 2036. It requires community college district governing boards to annually report specific information about dual enrollment to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee by December 1st. This previously, the date was October 1st, so that bill is proposing changing that date. I think Dr. Banks did a good job of describing Proposition 301. And then, interestingly enough, House Bill 2040 it authorizes community college districts to offer 4-year baccalaureate degrees that are accredited by regional accrediting agencies that are also approved by the U.S. Department of Education. So that one will be interesting to watch throughout the legislative season this year. As far as the district update, I have met individually with 196 full-time employees. And the themes, I think I've gone over this before, but it never hurts to reiterate. The themes include appreciation for the visiting with the VPs. This is when the VPs go around to each campus and they do a Q&A. The Trust Edge initiatives that we've been doing with building our culture of trust. Our guided pathways work. So again, people are appreciative that we are going to do that for our student success. The new online employee trainings, the ability for employees to do their training online at their desks rather than having to go to a workshop somewhere. The new facilities, obviously, and then improved opportunities for upward mobility. Some of our challenges that continue to need our attention are some of our processes are slow and laborious. However, with the new ERP, that may address some of that paper that flows between desks. Updating our computer hardware and connectivity, customer service, and communication. I'm also happy to report that I've been able to award 2 President's Innovation Grants so far. One went to Christine Cook to develop open educational resources for students that could lead to potential textbook savings, and one to Chris Dimmeline to pilot the use of Microsoft Surface Pros by instructors to deliver synchronous online course delivery. Just a reminder, we have the annual foundation fundraising event on February 15th at Windmill Winery. It was a successful event last year. Maggie's been working really hard to ensure this year's successful as well. So hopefully you'll be able to join us with that. There are 2 correspondents in your board book, one from Barbara Wandling, thanking the college for hosting the Apache Junction Gold Canyon Senior Expo. That event had over 400 visitors to our campus, some of whom reported that they didn't even know we had a campus there. So that was really nice exposure for the college. Also, there's a note in there from Expect More Arizona, thanking us for serving as the venue for the film screening of Teaching in Arizona that took place on October 24th. And that is the end of my report, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Questions for Dr. Elliott? Very good. Thank you very much. I think the board would like to compliment you on the interview that resulted in the podcast and the Above the Fold Casa Grande Dispatch article this morning on guided pathways. Nice representation of the college. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item of business is the business affairs reports. Chris Watka.
Thank you and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, governing board members, Madam President, Secretary, colleagues, and any guests joining us this afternoon. 3 items on your agenda for reports. The first one being the monthly budget reports. And these are for the month of December, which marks the 6th month of the new fiscal year. Our district's committed expenditures, general fund expenditures through December are 78.70% of the total budget, which is a slight tick of about half of 1% from December of 2017. You'll notice also that we still do not have the student revenue and scholarship data that we've been talking about over the last several months from our new system. We're getting closer to that solution, and we would definitely have that in the future months for you. But in terms of the expenditures, we are right on target of where we should be at this point in time. Any questions on the monthly budget?
Are there questions from the board relative to the budgetary analysis presented? No questions, please.
Thank you. The next item is the awarded purchases of $20,000 and over. A number of them this afternoon. First one is network switches and Cisco voice IP phone system, Dimension Data, Charlotte, North Carolina, $225,679.48, and that is to replace the cabling and the network switches for our phone system district-wide. Second item is the purchase of smart cards through Graybar out of Phoenix, Arizona, $23,946.30, and that is to purchase 5,000 smart cards, which are ID cards. Next item, SmartNet license renewal, Dimension Data, Charlotte, North Carolina, $47,442. That is to renew our annual license with SmartNet. Next item, document license renewal, DocuSign Incorporated, San Francisco, California, $26,800. That is also to renew our annual license with DocuSign. Next item is banner DBA support services. Campus EAI, Cleveland, Ohio, $22,555, and that is to purchase the DBA services for the district. And what I'd like to do there is clarify this is 1/3 of the budgeted cost. Even though we are now on the new system as of January, we are still have to pay some fees to Banner as we are looking at historical data and still in effect going back in that old system for the next 6 months. Next item, Polycom maintenance renewal. Solution Z video conferencing, Los Angeles, California, $40,732. That is to purchase software maintenance, and that is a renewal contract with Polycom. Cavit courses, Cavit out of Coolidge, Arizona, $68,306. That is our intergovernmental agreement with Cavit for the year. Fire service renewal, Regional Fire Rescue, Casa Grande, Arizona, our neighbors down the street, $42,189. That is to renew the annual fire service at the Signal Peak campus. And the last one, software upgrading consulting, Avid Consulting LLC, Gilbert, Arizona, $35,000. That is to contract for network and system consulting services for the district. Any questions on our purchases?
Yes, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind.
Dr. Banks.
Okay. What are we doing with Cavit?
What we do every year, it's an intergovernmental agreement that we have with them for courses.
So it's kind of like some of their students come to this campus or other CAC campuses.
No, maybe. Yeah, it's just an exchange, a swap exchange program that we have with them.
Oh, okay.
It's what?
Dual enrollment.
Dual enroll. Okay.
Their instructors and at their location.
And then just a clarification on this fire service agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why we have it,
Yes.
but do we pay taxes to Casa Grande?
Taxes in terms of sales taxes, or what kind of taxes?
Well, given the status of our college in the circle of governmental structures, I didn't think we were paying taxes, but I brought it up because I'm trying to understand the relationship, why we have to pay the fire department if we're already paying some type of tax to
Right.
Casa Grande.
Well, we do not pay property taxes as an institution to the city of Casa Grande. In order to have fire and medical ambulance services, we do have to engage with associations. This one in particular, we're on our fifth and final year of our agreement with them, and we've had them for about, I want to say, close to 20 years. What I plan on doing is going out to bid this summer because their contract expires, I believe, is either end of November or December. And since we haven't done that, to do our due diligence since our 5 year contract is expiring, to see who else would bid on our services and perhaps give us a better rate than what we're paying currently. But that's to be seen.
Love it. Now, what about Santan Valley? Are we paying rural metro there?
Yes, we pay at every campus for the fire services for who we engage with.
I'd be curious to find out how much we're paying Santan Valley's rural metro.
We can certainly look that up for you.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. It's part of a private mission, but it's there's suspicious billing going on there. That's all I can say.
Any other questions, Dr. Bank?
No.
All right, very good.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, do you have any questions?
Not for the items covered, but I do have a question for Mr. Wutka. A few constituents have expressed concern with the federal shutdown and how that might impact federally funds and grants for the college. Are there any concerns with you or your staff, Chris?
No concerns, Mr. Miller. We did talk about that last week at our CBO meeting. The only thing that it would impact potentially the colleges is on the financial aid side and in terms of any drawdowns and so forth. And that part of the Department of Ed is operational as far as I know and will continue to be. So there should be no impact of the shutdown on CAC operations.
And are we able to dip into reserves to cover anything if it becomes prolonged and then reimburse those funds once the federal government is back online?
Well, we do have reserves if we have to go that route, but the shutdown is not impacting CAC operations or financial aid or students in any way.
Okay, I think I heard all that. I apologize for not completely hearing what you're saying, but I believe I got the gist of it. That we're safe right now, correct?
I didn't hear that.
The question that he had is that, and Mr. Miller, let me just paraphrase what Chris said, and that is that the federal shutdown at this time has no impact on operations of the college or financial aid. Did I get that right, Chris?
That's correct.
And so at this point in time, they do not envision a need to dip into reserves, but the reserves are there if needed.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I think I understood all that. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Very good. If there's any questions, we can discuss it later after the meeting if you prefer.
Okay, my last item is a quick update on the ERP. When we came back from our break last Tuesday, January 8th, we went live, and we are currently live, and we are running the first payroll. Knock on wood. CAC teams have worked very hard over the Christmas break. I'd like to say a big thank you to a lot of the staff, a lot of the module owners and support staff were here working the couple of days after Christmas, the couple of days after the New Year, and also through last weekend as we're finalizing everything and running our first payroll. A lot of things will be automated. A lot of things are automated already in terms of the reporting of time. All college staff have been trained on how to input the time into the system for their regular time and any holiday and sick and so forth. And also the purchase requisition system is all online as well now. So we're starting to learn the system. We're learning as we go along. Campus management has had folks out last week, folks out this week, and I believe that for some time next week as well. And we're continuing to learn the nuances of the system and if any bugs should arise to address them. Any questions on the ERP?
Any questions on the ERP part of the report? Mr. Miller? He signed off. Okay, very good. Any questions, Dr. Banks?
None.
All right. Anytime a new system starts up, there's always some challenges and operations and excitement sometimes, but so far so good.
So far, so good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item is monitoring reports. And we're looking forward to hearing from Dr. Cardenas and Dr. Gilliland.
Good afternoon, Board President Gibson, members of the board, Dr. Elliott, colleagues, students, and guests. I'm going to present with Dr. Cardenas today, and I'll do the first two items. And we are reporting on outcome number 4 and the board monitoring reports about community, and to look at the way in which we ensure that Pinal County residents have access to lifelong learning and cultural enrichment. So the first two items I'm going to kind of bundle together. We'll look at each of the slides, but I'm going to kind of talk through them. They are about community education, and the first graph will be about enrollment in community education courses. Community education courses are generally non-credit courses. They're usually non-credit courses. They're usually intended for personal enrichment, you know, fun, learning new things, but without necessarily aiming towards a credential or degree. In the board monitoring reports, we are actually aiming to increase our enrollments. Could we go to the next slide? Okay. We are aiming to try to increase our enrollments. As you can see, our enrollments, actually our goal is 1,400 is set by the board. 1,400 students enrolled in CME courses in the course of an annual cycle. We were very close to that in a couple of years past, and we've had some dips, so we're looking to bring that up. And I think I can explain briefly. This is just really in a nutshell because there are multi-factors involved in why that dip occurred. We are, kind of right-sizing all of our programs at the moment. But in 2016 and 17, we actually did discontinue community ed during the summer, so we had a dip in enrollment at that time because we were looking at rebuilding the way we offered community education. So we simply didn't have courses over the summer, which did affect the enrollments. We've had some other factors affecting our enrollments this time around, and I'll explain that a little bit more at the end. But we are aiming to get those up, and we're working very hard to kind of reframe, reconfigure, and give a new face to community education. So in the next slide, we're looking not just at enrollment, but at the number of classes offered. And it's interesting. So while we've had a dip in enrollment, which we don't want, we've also had a kind of a jump in the number of courses we've offered. And again, we want to kind of right-size that and bring that back down, which is what we are aiming for and working very hard to achieve at this point in time. And you can see that, again, we were a little bit above what the board was aiming for, the 175 number, back in 2014, 15, 2015, 16, before they set those goals. We had a dip in the number of courses, a significant dip in 2016, 17, and that was, again, because of the change we were going through and kind of disbanding the system and stopping a number of our courses. And I think we can attribute the rise in the number of courses over 2017-18, which is really dramatic if you look at it. We want to bring that back down. But part of it is because as we were right-sizing our academic programs, we have moved a number of classes from academic or credit education into the community education area. And that would include a lot of our physical activity classes, things like yoga and dance and just many of our classes that are really more personal interest and more fitting with community ed. So there's a right sizing in process, but in the 2017-18, we had been moving things over and not necessarily taking things back out to right size. So we were in that process still. So if I can, we're not going to look at that. We're going to save the next slide for Dr. Cardenas. But if I can just speak briefly about some of our recent and planned improvements in community education. In a nutshell, we are looking at, we have been in process of reevaluating community education classes based on the interests of the local populations. And we believe that it is not necessarily the case that we will offer the same courses at each of the campus locations. There are some programs and activities in community ed that are very popular, for example, in Apache Junction, and other things that are more popular here at Signal Peak and, you know, again, at the different campus locations. So we're looking at that and reframing those. We are looking at right sizing, although we've had an increase in some classes based on academic courses moving into the personal interest area. We have some older courses that are actually coming out of that set of offerings. So those numbers should be back down in the next round as we measure them. We also, one of the largest, I think, planned improvements, and actually we're just getting it launched, we're not quite there yet, but we have researched and invested in a new registration system for just community education. And we think that this is going to really help with enrollments, because up until now, community education students have had to go through the registration process that our academic students go through. And, you know, we require a lot of information for students who are credential seeking. We look at transfer credits, we look at their transcripts from, you know, their prior institutions. There's a lot of information we gather about our incoming students, and in order to help them prepare for the academic programs. Not really needed if you're going to take a Mahjong class. So we are now moving towards a much more streamlined system so students can register really easily and get into those classes that they want for that personal interest. It's not quite launched yet, though we have acquired it and we're working on getting that ready to go. I think another thing that is going to potentially make a very big difference in community education is that we are researching, we haven't launched yet, but we're looking at adding continuing education units to the community education mix, which will be, it's academic, but it's really more for professional enrichment and could be a really great opportunity for us here at Central Arizona College and for many of our professionals, especially in healthcare and education fields where they need those CEUs in order to keep up. So those are just a couple of the things that we are looking at bringing in that I think will make probably a very significant difference in where we're going. So I'm going to wrap up my piece there and turn it over to Dr. Cardenas, and then at the very end, I think we'll have an opportunity for some questions, and I'll be glad to address anything then.
Good afternoon, President Gibson, Governing Board, Dr. Elliott, community staff, and students. The second two slides that I'm going to talk about, sorry, that got pretty loud. The first one is related to the number of performances and cultural events that are occurring at the college, and you'll see there's been quite an increase from 2014-15 to where we are today in 2017-18, and I think two major things have occurred in these last few years that have really that we can attribute that increase to. One is the expansion of the campuses over the last few years, but really it's been the partnership between academics and student services in general and the other departments on campus who have really worked together to streamline how we're getting together to put these different events on, but also really coming together to ensure that we're providing different opportunities for our students to participate in everything from viewing different movies to cultural events and fairs and lunch and learns and discussions and many different things that have engaged many of our community members as well as students. The other part is that we've really opened things up to community members rather than having closed events just for our students on campus, and we've seen quite an increase in the number of events that community members have come to, so that's been a great increase for the college overall. The second is related to community perception and satisfaction, and that's really a way of us understanding how the community feels regarding its partnerships and the way that we work with the community in general. We started with, or have been down to a low of 68% when it comes to satisfaction, and we've now increased to 84%. And there have been quite a few things that we've been able to do to really help to bring that number up. To start with, we've really looked at who our partners are. We've ensured that the connections and the contacts that we have with who we're sending the survey to is going to the right people, and also asking much more targeted questions regarding how we're serving the populations within their groups. So whether it be a school district, a hospital that we're providing students who are going in and doing their practicum time, or
working in the communities in general. So I think we've had some great increases in both of these areas for the college as a whole. And as I said, I really feel as though the biggest thing that's happened over the last few years has been the collaboration of all of the different departments and working together across the college, opposed to in small pockets throughout the district. So the type of planned improvements or recent improvements that we've had that I haven't mentioned, one is that there is a new creation of an events webpage on our cultural and civic engagement page that was just recently created. I'm actually not even positive. Angela might know if it's been launched. Has it launched? So it just recently launched, which will be a place where students and community members can go to see the type of cultural events that we have on campus. The tracking system will be centrally located there so that we really have a better way of understanding what we have, but also being able to look and see on the different campuses what's missing. So if we're doing something on one campus that's really been successful, are we doing it other places, and would it be successful there as well? So that centralized location has been really helpful. And again, the enhanced collaboration. Planned improvements for the two areas really are looking through all of the events that we've had and what has been the most successful. What are community members and students asking for? What are areas that we haven't maybe addressed as heavily as other areas, and how can we improve that? Again, we did add institution-specific questions to the survey that went out to determine how satisfied our partners were with us, to really ensure that we're providing them what they're looking for. Again, like I said, with the different employers and clinical sites and those different areas. So we've had lots of deliberate communication with our partners to say, what is it that you need? What are we missing? And with the community as a whole. So I think that's the reason that we've seen such great improvements. So those are two really positive ones to look at. Questions for either those two or the first two slides?
Questions? So it looks like we are making progress across the areas. That's
Yes.
good news.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, good job, ladies.
All right, I think that concludes our agenda items as listed for today. Our next board meeting will be on February 26th at the Santan campus. And until then, we will see you all. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.